Tensions between DOGE and government-funded entities they're trying to overhaul seems to be rising. Hey, that's the name of the show. In this instance, it's the U.S.'s Institute for Peace.
DOGE tried to gain access to the USIP building, but were initially denied. Then days later, DOGE came back with D.C. police escorts.
When DOGE first appeared at the USIP building, per the Washington Post, they presented a document showing that then-acting USIP president had been fired. USIP released a statement at the time reading, "On the afternoon of Friday, March 14, 2025, several members of the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, arrived at the United States Institute of Peace, unaccompanied by two FBI agents, unannounced. They were met at the door by the Institute's outside counsel, who informed them of USIP's private and independent status as a non-executive branch agency. Following that discussion, the DOGE representatives departed. Then, after DOGE was able to get into the building with the MPD escorts, DOGE wrote on X, Mr. Moose denied lawful access to Kenneth Jackson, the acting USIP president. D.C. police arrived on site and escorted Mr. Jackson into the building. The only unlawful individual was Mr. Moose, who refused to comply and even tried to fire USIP's private security team when said security team went to give access to Mr. Jackson."
MPD said in a statement that officers responded to a call for service of unlawful entry on Monday. MPD added that they didn't arrest anyone and that people had left the building without incident.
President Trump had signed an executive order in February to either eliminate or dwindle certain agencies. The order for USIP was for expected termination. Moose and almost all other board members of the agency were fired on Friday, per multiple reports. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, and National Defense University President Peter Garvin were the only ones who remained on board. White House spokesperson Anna Kelly told the AP yesterday, "Rogue bureaucrats will not be allowed to hold agencies hostage. The Trump administration will enforce the president's executive authority and ensure that his agencies remain accountable missed that up both times today, to the American people."
Congressman Don Beyer wrote on Blue Sky yesterday, "I was at USIP tonight to conduct congressional oversight over DOGE's break-in. I spoke with Acting President and CEO Moose. USIP is an independent, nonprofit entity, and I will work to stop DOGE's illegal power grab."
Congress passed legislation to create USIP in 1984, and Reagan signed it into law.
So these unelected bureaucrats, such as, in my mind, Elon Musk, who is he to say? And for that matter, who is the president to say? This is not a part of the executive branch of the government. 1984, law signed, passed by Congress, signed by Ronald Reagan, a Republican president. The USIP, the Institute of Peace, is not under the direct control of the president. What is he trying to do? What is he trying to do? That's the question. This is authoritarianism. He's trying, whether it has to do with the Park Service, whether it has to do with the Kennedy Center. You think the Kennedy Center, the problem here is that it's not serving the American people and that the president should have a say over what's happening here? If a Democrat were behaving this way, would you be okay with it? Honestly, if a Democrat were behaving this way, would you be okay with that?
I think that they should eliminate this agency by passing a law that does so while they control Congress. I don't think cuts via executive action are the way to go because they can be easily undone and will be undone by the courts, as has already begun to happen. I'm worried that Republicans are trying to implement the Elon Trump DOGE agenda in a way they know will backfire so that they can whine and complain that they've been thwarted by activist judiciary or the deep state. That said, I don't. What does the U.S. Institute of Peace accomplish?
That's what I was just going to ask you. Do you even know what they do?
I do not.
They have projects and programs that have to do with building peace. You know, when you and
They've done a very good job at this.
Pardon? Who are you to say that they're not doing a good job? And if they are not doing a good job, I would have no problem with these, all of their projects, all of their programs being made public. All of us, which they probably are, by the way, and the American people having a chance to decide. I do not think Elon Musk coming in there and just saying, nope, it's out, or the president saying, no, we're eliminating it. And all this language about unelected bureaucrats, a lot of these unelected bureaucrats in all of these agencies are experts in their fields, people who have dedicated their lives to these programs, whether it has to do with park rangers, whether it has to do with low-cost housing, whether it has to do with helping consumers. These are people who are being villainized and demonized, unelected bureaucrats, as though they represent something, this deep state that's so awful. It's being replaced by a dark state.
How can you say that when you're so exercised about the threats to democracy and things not being decided democratically? The unelected bureaucrats' criticism is because these are people who do not have to stand for election, who are making decisions independent of what legislatures have authorized them to do, who are making decisions.
How do you know that they're making decisions that are different? First of all, we elect the president. We cannot be expected, the American people cannot be expected to elect the hundreds of thousands of people who are hired by people who are then appointed.
I mean, you like to go back to our founding documents. Our founders never imagined a federal government that would be hiring and employing so many thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people. The
country was tiny, Robby, compared to what it is now. It was a few colonies.
Well, they didn't envision any of this being at federal power. They gave to the states so many of these powers, and
President Clinton eliminated 450,000 jobs. Eliminating jobs when any system becomes bloated is not an invalid concept. The issue is, how is it done? And the idea that it's done by this unelected bureaucrat named Elon Musk, who just comes in there and starts cutting and breaks his way. Pardon?
He's the unelected.
He is absolutely the unelected bureaucrat. And you say, well, he's appointed by the president. Well, all of these people have been hired by the people who lead these agencies. It has to do with process. It has to do with the rule of law, Robby. That's what's going on here. We can have legitimate conversations, high-minded conservatism, high-minded liberalism. They're both important, actually, to the American public discourse. And the idea of cutting back bloat is valid. But how this is being done is an authoritarian process, and that's the problem that we have
Congress
with all
would do it,
of
but
this.
they're not willing to do anything. Congress will never claw back government spending, will never reduce departments. They just voted to keep in power the exact Biden agenda, the exact Biden spending levels. Republicans did that. So there will never be any cutting that Congress willfully considers.
Clinton cut 450,000 jobs.
Was 80,000 million years ago.
Only someone your age could possibly say that. But it was not 100,000 years ago.
It was a different political era. You know that, Marianne. It was
He didn't have to get Congress to go along with it. But he set it up. It was a deliberative process. That's the problem here. And you keep trying to get us away from that, because the non-deliberative process is dictatorial. And you will not talk to me about that. You don't want to take on that conversation. And that's the conversation why I have to keep saying it, because you won't take me on that one. Because really, and I do believe that if a Democrat was acting this way, I can't imagine that you as an American would not have a problem with that, regardless of what party.
If a Democrat was working to shutter useless, countless federal agencies, you're right, I'd be applauding. I'd be standing up cheering. I'd be saying, see, Republicans, this is how it's done. Finally, they did it. I would be celebrating this person.
Medical research is not useless. Research on children's cancer is not. How can you?
Because that's so.
Roll your eyes. My niece is a
doctor.
there's
a sick child, so we can't cut the government. I mean, that feels like emotional manipulation.
It is not emotional manipulation. It is proper emotion to care about values such as caring for the sick. All men are given by God inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Government's role, according to the Declaration, is to secure those rights. Damn right, children's cancer, or preventing Ebola, or preventing another pandemic. This is the rightful purpose of government.
Government spending is the likely cause of the pandemic in the first place.
That's a whole different, if you're talking about COVID, that's a whole other conversation.
But that's not really to me, that's not incidental. And that demonstrates the need for these so-called experts who you are celebrating. Oh, but it's experts running everything, so isn't that great? But experts, they like Jurassic Park brought back dinosaurs to kill everyone. Like they should still be subjected to democratic accountability. And the experts disagree. There's widespread disagreement among experts on science. So we need
No. There is a level of healthy skepticism about any government, that I believe that we should have in a free society. I'm not saying that we should not. But what is happening here has to do with cutting out services and gutting agencies that actually do the work of an effective government. That's what's happening here. This is a demolition of effective functioning and righteous functioning of the U.S. government, and that is their goal, and it is the role of every American to ask ourselves, why are they doing that? Because something very sinister is going on here. And millions of us are very upset about it.
They do it with our money. They take the American.
That's what. What do you think taxes
money.
should be? So you don't think there should be? You'd like to just eliminate taxes, right?
I'd like a voluntary taxation system.
Yeah.
Wonders.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, we've got more to discuss today, so we have to move on. One Texas lawmaker is taking a stand against school vouchers. We will debate that. Stay tuned.